30 participants in the room.
Okay. How many?
Well, actually probably 31 if you count Bill and Christine.
Okay.
And it's 2:01.
Okay, we're going to get this meeting started. I want to remind everybody that you need to mute your mic unless you're talking. We will be going with the hand raising, and they will be called in order because they come up on the screen that way. This is a transition team informational session, and we need to conduct ourselves like adults and be respectful of each other. We all have different opinions and stuff. So be patient. You'll have a chance to talk, and we will move on, and I will turn the meeting over to Jenny.
Thank you, Ty. You know, I hope all of you can hear me. If I do break up, let me know. But this informational meeting today is for you. It's for you to get questions answered. Back in January, the vote by the IBT was to proceed forward evaluating the opportunity for an executive council to replace an executive committee. That's what this meeting is going to talk about, how far we've come. Before we get going, though, we want to go ahead and do a poll question. And this is just light and easy. Now we have several poll questions throughout this presentation today. And the first poll question is going to just give you an opportunity to get used to how to do the polling. My personal choice had been, this first poll question should have said, Wally Byam should be the 5th sculpture in Mount Rushmore, agree or disagree. However, they went with something a little bit more serious toned. So we'll start with the first poll question and go ahead and evaluate this, submit your answers, and just get used to the process. And once you've submitted, the tally comes to Lori and she can see that we've all participated. These poll questions are in no way a vote. They're just sort of a touch base, finding out where we're at. Has everyone had a chance to do that?
We're getting close. We are currently at 26. Those that are on your phones, David, could you actually see the poll?
No, ma'am, I can't see it.
Okay. Brad, can you see it? Are you? I should not be asking you these questions. Okay.
Yes.
Brad, please do not do this.
I'm sorry.
Lori, I'm on my phone and I was able to see it.
Okay. Okay. So, yes, Ginger. You're muted. Ginger, can you unmute yourself?
Press your space bar.
Okay, I'm going to send you an ask to unmute. You should get something to pop up maybe on your screen. I don't know, kind of, there you are.
There we go. I'm so good at technology. My submit button is not highlighted, so I can't send it.
Okay.
There's 2 questions. You have to answer both questions before it'll highlight.
Down?
Oh, no, I can't
Are
see.
you having the same problem?
Oh, there we go. Okay, sorry.
No problem. Thanks for asking. Okay, Jenny, yes, we have 28 out of 29 at this point.
All right, let's go ahead and proceed. One thing I'd like to talk about before we get into the meat of the meeting is that there have been some rumors that our team has actually heard that this proposal is involving many, many components of the club, and it really isn't. It is not. It is strictly involving what is now the executive council of the executive committee shifting to become an executive council. The rumor has been that region presidents will no longer be there. Clubs will be disbanded. None of that is true. This is a very, very limited proposal to a very, very limited component within our club. And I really want to stress that point. You already have voted as region presidents in January to proceed looking forward to this. All that this transition team has done is take the compilation of the first and second phases of evaluating how to enact this and kind of coalescing it all into a report for you. So we have argued and debated and discerned and finally collaborated to develop this plan for you. A lot of your questions we have had too. So don't be shy about bringing them up. You may discover we already shared that within our groups, 21 people looking at it. So whatever you're wondering about, I hope you bring to us today. This forum should be really respectful. I value every single question and every opinion you have because you're representing a lot of people. And if you feel that way, maybe others do too. So please bring it forward. However, may I ask that if you bring it forward, have an open mind to hear the answer. And they'll be answered from our transition team. Many of us are here. So before we get into the meat of this meeting, we're going to ask a poll question once again. Go ahead, please, Lori.
Everybody should have it on their screen now.
It's simply 2 questions. Are we ready?
25. $27. Okay, so we're at 27. Jenny, I'll go ahead and close this poll.
Thank you. Joanne, I really want to thank you first and foremost for your comments when you asked everybody to please do their due diligence, read through this material, and not just rely on the Blue Beret article as the Reader's Digest condensed version, thinking that they really got it. It takes a little bit of investment of your intellect, which we all can do. And I hope that you took Joanne's advice and read through this. I'm going to assume you did because our votes they're an honor and they're sacred. And those votes need to be backed up by a true understanding. Whether you agree or disagree isn't what I'm saying. I'm saying get an understanding of what's being asked about the vote. So Joanne, I really do want to thank you for that comment that you made. One of the things that I have discovered in this process is that we boiled it down quite simply to only a few components. However, it still seems to be quite confusing until all of a sudden the light bulb goes on and you get your head around it and you're like, oh, is that all that's being asked? We're not revamping this club. We're strictly trying to provide a platform that will allow leadership within this club to commence with their leadership on first and foremost on a more trained level than they have been, and secondly, on a more community-based level. In addition, encouraging the membership mano a mano to interact. Again, there was some talk that this was going to remove the members' ability to vote and to have a say in who was leading this club. That's actually the exact opposite. There's a 180-degree point of view I'd like to present, and that is, not only is it not doing that, it's going to include the membership at a level they've never had the opportunity to be included for. The delegate voting is happening right now in the final phase of delegate voting. It will shift to email balloting and email direct voting by each member into next year. That gives the membership an opportunity to have a lot more of a say. One of the challenges with delegate voting is, do we have the freedom to choose, allow the delegate to vote their content? Does the delegate need to strictly stay with what the club wanted? And it's creating a challenge when we have different levels with different club rules, that they have members who feel that their voice is never heard. That's not going to be the case anymore. So that in and of itself is a huge improvement for a large club like this. The second thing that I wanted to address was that this type of format might in fact not work well with a large group. This is probably the most effective leadership model for a large group, because it gives so many more people an opportunity to have a voice, be heard, and be involved. When voting for the new EC, the members will be given a slate of of candidates to be elected to a seat at the table, not to be elected into a specific officer role. What that means is essentially anybody that they elect could be selected as an officer. So they need to have that mindset, and it's a different mindset, that they are electing all leaders. Every person on that EC is a leader and can step in and out of roles as they are best suited. That's really an important part, that the entire membership, in fact, excuse me, one moment, I have to turn my phone off. The entire membership, in fact, is selecting all of the leaders at the same point in time. That's a big important factor, because basically in a large board setting, such as 10 people, I've actually been in boards of 35 people and worked within this in much, much larger organizations than even our club. So speaking from that point of view, I can tell you that this tends to be a lot more a cohesive group. They work with each other, they rely on each other, and they interchange ideas much more effectively. One of the most important things that you need to recognize is that the entire IBT, all region presidents, the 12 of them, will also be making decisions with this EC. It is not a little coven, a secret hideout where 10 people rule the roost. That is not the point, and that is not the reality. And I stress that. This allows a larger platform for leaders to become trained, for integration of members to interject their own skills and hopefully bring a lot of desire, a lot of drive, and a lot of enthusiasm into our club leadership. One of the challenges,
Jenny?
presidents, yes.
Do you want people to ask questions? I know Ken Johansson had his hand up, or do you want to wait till you take a break to ask questions? We didn't clarify that at the beginning.
Right now, I'm just going to give an overview presentation of what the team has come up with. Once we do that, we'll have a second poll question. And then after that second poll, well, actually it'll be our third poll question, the second of a serious poll question. And then after that, we're going to open it up for questions. And we're going to not just have me answer the questions, we're going to have our entire transition team answer the questions.
But what's happening here is you're campaigning for this event. You're campaigning for this idea by going on and on about telling us things, and you're not telling us things that the way it is now. I mean, what you're saying is we have everything you're saying we have currently. And so you're going on and on about this idea, and what you're doing is you're campaigning for it.
I'm sharing with you the why.
We know
Mr.
why.
Johansson.
We know why. We've been inundated with the whys.
Okay, Ken, I'm going to ask everybody hold their questions till we get done with the second poll, and then we can discuss this. Let her get through her presentation, and we'll go from there.
Okay, all right.
Go ahead, Jenny.
I'm grateful for that interjection, Ken. It shows how passionate you are. And that's an important thing in this club. It's very important. Whether you call what I'm doing explaining how we got to the point we got to, or campaigning, the end result is the same. I'm sharing with you what brought our team to the summation of the report that you have in front of you. The report that you have in front of you overviews the proposal itself. The proposal is for 10 people to serve on an executive council. You all know this. There will be an immediate past international president. That position is not re-elected every term, which is a 2-year term. In fact, that is an appointed, granted in deference to the service of their role. 9 people will be re-elected. There may be a chance that it must be 10 in the event that an immediate past president is still leaving and we need to bring in somebody else. That may happen. There's lots of what if scenarios. Most of them can be answered if you really develop an understanding of this platform. Terms are for 2 years. They are elected on the odd year. All the seats, except for the immediate past president, are up for re-election. The seats are up. The offices are not. In other words, you don't re-elect the president. You re-elect the person to the seat at the table. The IBT selects the officers. The entire IBT, not the executive council. They put forth the recommendations. However, the IBT is the voice that selects the officers. Additionally, there are term limits. And we went through this in our transition team multiple times. We feel strongly, it's our recommendation that the term limit is an entire 6-year period of time, unless the immediate past president is required to serve an additional term. So that would be 3 terms, no more, no rotating off and coming back on. 1 set of 6 years is all that we would recommend. These are not dictates. These are recommendations from a committee put together with lots of time put into it. The third thing that we wanted to stress for everybody was the opportunity for multiple officer roles. A person can serve no more than 2 terms in the same role. However, they may serve multiple roles. If I may give you an example, let's say that candidate A comes in and he is selected because he meets the eligibility requirements as laid forth in our proposal, that they have served 2 years on the IBT. 2 years on the IBT can be 2 years as the region president or 2 years serving in the executive council, because the IBT encompasses both, all 22
And
people.
even he can only do,
I'm sorry, who was speaking?
I think somebody just hit their mute at the wrong time. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm sorry, I've lost my train of thought on that. I was sharing about an example would be a person coming in as a vice president because they are eligible initially when they're brought in. They've already served on the IBT. They're serving their first term as the vice president. Perhaps their second term, they're selected to be the president. And then the third term, there may be the immediate past president. So you can see that there can be multiple offices served while in your term. Therefore, we don't limit that you can only serve one office. That actually doesn't even make sense. So finally, I would like to just bring up the final point that all of your concerns and your questions are valid to me. We have brought many of them to the table. If they are based on information that we don't understand, we will look into it for you. If they are based on opinion, they may not necessarily represent a lot of what's inside of our process, but we still value that information. Now we're going to go to the second poll question.
We did have some additional folks join us. We have a total of 32 people on the line at this point.
Lori Pear will be joining us in a few minutes. He's on a business call.
Okay.
I would like to share one very important point. My job, that I was asked to do was to take a look at the previous two teams, the special committees. I was on the first one, I was not on the second one. Take a look at where they brought this proposal to, and to finish it up into a format to present to you. That's my job. My job was to assemble a team, to look at this, to listen, and to not assume that we know everything, and to really try to understand what works, what doesn't work. Why change, why not change? Those were real important questions. My job was not to present the opposing point of view to you. My job is not campaigning. My job is reporting what we did. And I want to make that important point. Our job as a transition team was not to show you what works, what doesn't work, what works, what doesn't work, all down the line. Our job was to look at this, see how it could work, and bring it to you.
Jenny, we're currently at 29, and I did not share the last as I should have. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll, give a couple more seconds if anybody's in the midst or needs assistance. So I'm going to end the poll and then share the results. So as you can see on the first question, we have 14 strongly yes, we have 9 that yes, need more questions, 5 at a no, 1 at a strongly no. Number 2 on the material presented, 11 is strongly yes, 13 yes, but more questions. 4 no, have more questions, 1 at a strong no. And then the final question at this point, you're personally supportive of the EC structuring. We got 11 strong yeses, 8 mild yeses, 7 undecided, 1 mild no, and 2 strong no. So that's currently where we are.
Lori, does that scroll down? I could only see the first question and the first answer, the second question. When you display that poll,
yes.
I could only see a part. I could only see the first question and the answers. I could listen to what you told me for the second and third questions, but I don't know if you can scroll down so that shows as you go through it.
You have to scroll on your side, Karen. It's on the client side.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that.
Okay, go ahead, Jenny.
At this point, I hope that you have some constructive questions. You do need to remember this has actually been voted on. Nobody is asking you today for a vote. These polling questions are simply to get a sense of, have we communicated to you well enough for you to grasp an understanding of it? That's the biggest question I have. We are working underneath the exact wording that was voted on in January about 2-year terms and about a term limit of 6 years. We're working underneath that. And within those constraints, we hope that we have been able to develop something that you guys can support, understand most of all, and really engage in, because it is a much more engaging process. Let's take some questions.
Okay, John Holly.
Hi, one question I have, and it's I just need to have it cleared up. What I've been hearing from several people as I've been discussing this, which I'm in favor of some restructure, is that the 10 people on the executive council will have total power exclusive of the IBT or the presidents. Now, are the 12 presidents member of the executive council as well? And if they are, that will solve that problem. But if they're not, what power do they have? What authority do they have in regard to and in relation to the executive council?
That is such an excellent question. That's an outstanding question. Okay, to understand the entire IBT, there's 2 factions. The IBT is 10 executive council and 12 region presidents. The executive council has certain administrative powers, just like now, a president, vice president, they have administrative powers, but large decisions still go all the way through the entire IBT and for the most part, the membership. So no, I love that you brought that up because that is a misnomer. That is absolutely not true. So you said, are the 12 members part of the executive council? Kind of. I mean, they're all part of the IBT. They make up the IBT. So as far as decision-making on administrative things, that you will see a breakdown very clearly of the roles of each of the officers and the role of the executive council. And it's very similar to what's happening now. There's really no shift in the quote power. The power lies in the membership, and the power lies in the club. And directing the efforts toward that first and foremost, I think erases a lot of that stress that somebody's going to have power over me.
Any part of your team, Tom, I think wanted to comment on that as well, if you're Tom Smith.
Definitely. I love Tom's comments.
Good morning, one and all. I think that people need to refer back, look at the current bylaws and bylaws of the club, because the executive committee, as it's currently constituted, is subservient to the IBT. It cannot do anything that the IBT does not essentially authorize. It can't go around the IBT. If the IBT makes a decision, the EC cannot change that decision in any way other than to enforce whatever it is that the IBT has said. And that is not going to change at all. The IBT, which is all of the region presidents elected by their members, and the executive committee or executive council in this case, would need to work together. But the executive council is still subservient to the total IBT. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Joanne?
I just would like some clarification on something that Jen said about something has been voted on. Could you repeat that for me, Jen? And then I may have some questions.
That's great. Well, looking at Article 3, now this was what the motion was at the IBT in January in Savannah. And Article 3 was called the Executive Council. And what's been voted on is this. The Executive Council is the administrative body of the International Club and shall oversee the daily operations of the club between meetings of the IBT. The executive officers of the International Club shall be a president, a vice president, a recording secretary, and a treasurer. All executive officers, this is the most important part, shall be elected from the Executive Council of the International Board of Trustees for a term of 2 years. The officers so elected shall take office at the start of the WBCCI fiscal year. No officer shall serve more than 2 consecutive terms in any one office. Then it goes on
you,
to,
Jen?
Go ahead.
May I stop you? First of all, we could not have voted on that in January because that is contrary to our current constitution. I'm thinking that what happened is the IBT voted to submit the constitutional amendment to the delegates in this summer meeting. That was all they voted on. Then the transition committee was appointed by Ty in January in Savannah. And that's all that's happened so far, to my knowledge. We have not voted on anything that has come out of your committee yet, because you presented a report to us earlier. We had questions and you went back to your committee and had additional meetings. And now you are coming back to us with, I'm assuming, your final report from your committee. And this is where we are. At some point, your committee's recommendations or plan will need to be approved by the IBT. Okay? So until this point, this has not been voted on. All that has been voted was approval to submit to the IBT or to the delegates Constitutional Amendment number 2.
And that's what I'm referring to, is this constitutional amendment number 2 proposal that I have a copy of. And if I'm not stating that properly, I'm certainly not trying to intimate that anybody has passed through anything that we've recommended. I recognize completely that this is simply, today's meeting is simply a summary presentation of what our transition team has come forward with in a recommendation for you. That is all. Referring to my constraints of what was passed at the IBT, this is the proposed, well, I suppose it's proposed. I'm not 100% certain, but it was what was voted on was that it was going to be approved, I believe 13-4 by the IBT to go to the delegates for the vote in July for a constitutional change. Am I correct on that?
You are correct. They agreed to submit it to the delegates for a vote. Okay. They did not vote to approve it as written. They agreed to submit it to the delegates.
True, but
Okay.
I have been told, and I might not be correct on this, Joanne, you certainly can correct me if I'm not understanding it properly, but this was the constraints we were working within, what was being proposed by the IBT. And we were working within those constraints I just read to you.
Right, that's correct.
Great.
Because the intent was, once this is approved by the delegates, then we would be in a much better position to be ready to implement it on the 1st of August, rather than waiting until we see the results of the delegates meeting and then try and scramble and put something together for August 1st. So you are correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's see who else we got up here. Larry Madden.
Hey, everybody, how you all doing? Jennifer, I'd like to pose a question to you. I've got a number of questions. I've got in front of me your transition team report, as well as your article, The Blue Beret, that I got a couple days ago. And I've been reviewing that pretty closely. And I'm going to read my question because it's a little long and it's repetitive, but maybe it'll be easier for you all to understand. It says the transition team their recommendation is that 7 officers elected in July of 2022 transfer their service as members on the new executive council. That would be in August of 2022. In your Blue Beret article, Jenny, you state that the executive council member each will serve for 2 years, a term, which is 2 years, with the elections only on the alternate odd years for all seats up for re-election. So if we're looking at the officers elected in the IBT or in the International Rally this summer, July of 2022, and they're, for no better word, grandfathered into the new executive council in 2022, how are we going to have re-elections in odd years? Are they just going to serve 1 year and then have a re-election, or are we going to start it in 2023?
This is Bill Wild from the transition team. May I address his question, please?
Sounds great.
Okay, thank you. One of the things that may not be clear to some folks is the fact that in the transition year, we are proposing that year is that term is only a 1-year term. So that's why you'll have the election again in an odd year, because in 23 is when we would have the elections for all of those officers that will serve the first of many of the 2-year terms that we'll have from now on. For the transition year only, it's a 1-year term. And it's worth noting that because of that, those 7 individuals would only have a potential 5-year run instead of a 6-year run, because of the fact that their 3 terms consist of 1 1-year term and 2 2-year terms. Does that help, Larry?
Yeah, it sure does. I didn't, well, it's fine. That helps if that's the case, yes.
So carry on with your next question.
My next question is, the nominating standing committee is currently made up of region vice presidents. I believe there's 6 of them. What is the criteria going to be used to consider for somebody who's interested on a seat on the executive council? And to follow up with that, currently the nomination committee is there for 2 years. And will that change? Will the nomination committee change for the people interested on the executive council?
Well, that is outside the boundaries of the task that we were given. However, we did speak about that, Larry, because we have very, very strong concerns as well about the strength of the nominating committee, the clarity, and the direction that it is going at the present time, not really jiving well with this direction. Can I ask Bard to answer this question, please?
Okay, I'm Bard Fuller, Region 1 Vice President. I have served on the nominating committee this past year. I also see Nancy Fitzgerald along here too. We both have served there, and I think we can all agree that it was not as efficient as we would have liked it to have been. And going forward, we have some beliefs that the nominating committee should have some more teeth into it. It should be a committee that is proactive and goes out and searches for people instead of sitting back waiting for resumes to come in. We also think that we should be more inclusive of people with many more skills than just people that have aspiration to be a leader as a president or something. But if we can have people that have membership or have IT backgrounds or some of these other backgrounds, we would love to see those people be brought into the executive committee or the executive council, as it will be thought potentially in the future. So I hope we can strengthen what we have. Again, it was outside the bounds of the charge of our committee, but we have some very strong concerns that this should be part of what we do as we go forward, should this constitution be altered for that, or even if it hasn't been altered by this constitutional change, we need to really address the nominating committee and have more teeth in it.
Well,
okay, that's all I have to say.
I'm concerned that if somebody doesn't have a business background or a IT background, that rather dismisses somebody who may have great leadership qualities that aren't quite as notable with the background of having IT or a resume that's written in the business world.
Not the case at all, from my point of view. First and foremost, we would like a whole diverse set of skills, not just 1 or 2, from members that would love to be included in the roles of leading this club at whatever you designate that role to be, but becoming a part of the EC. So you're right, Larry, there needs to be a lot more clarity on what qualifies somebody in the vetting process, first and foremost. Secondly, how is that vetting done and who is doing it? And then, of course, finally, what qualifications are we looking for in membership who would love to serve? Just to bring back one point, if you look at the 4th page, Larry, of that report, the longer report, you'll see part 2, the transition year. It might help you if you read through that. It might answer that question for you about the terms and how that lays out. I admit that it is a bit cumbersome to try to slog through these reports, but as soon as you can understand that, I think it will flow a little more easily for you.
Thank you.
Anything
Thank
else,
you.
Larry?
This is
Okay,
Karen. May I make a comment related to that?
yes, Karen.
There will need to be some minor adjustments in how the nominating committee is defined, because it currently defines 2 members of that committee as the 2nd and 3rd international vice presidents, which we will not have under the executive council format that we're considering. But it's kind of a minor change. And I believe we could just substitute 2 current members of the executive council for those 2 positions, or however somebody wants to do it, but they will need some minor changes.
Thank you, Karen. Artie, you're next.
How's it going, guys? Mike, can you, everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. When I think about our region, Region 5, and Chris is on the line as well, and I've been looking at this with an open mind, but yet at the same time, we lead in Region 5 as we are friends of our membership. We camp with them, we go out to eat with them, we share Sunday morning service with them. We collectively know these people for many years. I've been a member now for 12 years, and Chris has as well. And our ability to be able to understand this is so important when these folks come to us, our members that we've known for years, and they say, what are they doing? What's going on? What are they doing? We don't understand it. We don't understand it. So our ability to be able to relate this information back to our members is critical. So far, this is what I've got, and I'll try to be as brief as I can here. So far, what I've got is the local clubs are going to vote their own boards, their own presidents. The regions are still going to vote their own boards and their own presidents. So really, nothing locally too much is going to change in their camping world, as I look at it. But when we go to the corporate side of it, it gets all wishy-washy. And I say that because, first off, there's nothing permanently in place yet. So, and it's going to have to be tweaked probably for a couple of years. But will the people understand that if they want to become a region president, they can still be voted to be a region president by their region, like it always has been? And then, since we're changing the terms of the presidency and they will come out of the executive council, does the delegate, the entire delegate of the club, they will no longer vote for the president of the presidents of the international anymore? That's a question that I have.
I will answer that for you if you'd like.
Okay.
And certainly anyone else, Eric, you might want to chime in on this as well. Directly yes and directly no. How about wishy-washy? Yeah, that sounds about as wishy-washy as it gets. Every time that there is an election, the seats that the membership votes for are the seats for the executive council. Every person that they vote for could potentially be a president. So will they vote for one specific person? No, because people no longer run for an office. They run for a seat at the table. They run to be a member of the executive council. Like a lot of organizations that the board runs everything. Now there's a leader on that board as the person that's the president, and there's a vice president, and there's an immediate past president. There's a recording secretary, and there's a treasurer, but they are first and foremost members of the executive council. So the executive council is really the one that would assume those duties together collectively.
Okay.
But not in any way overriding the IBT.
Okay, so the delegates are going to vote for the executive council, but only the regions will vote for the region presidents. Is that still the same?
That's still exactly the same. You're so
okay,
right.
So in order to become an international president, do you still have to do your 2 years as a region president and then be voted into the executive council before you can then move on to be an international president?
Great question, Artie. Outstanding question. There's 2 paths.
Jennifer, can I answer that?
I'd love you to.
Okay, Artie, right now, if you can be voted into the executive council, according to this proposal, anytime. If we see somebody that is really strong, all they can be is an executive committee if they were not part of that council for 2 years, or the IBT for 2 years. Like say some person A got elected, has not been a region officer or region president, then they would have to wait to be an officer for 2 years. Now, if somebody comes in and came off as a region, had 2 years as region president in one of the 12 regions, then yes, they could come in and be president, vice president, secretary, or treasurer.
But once again, they would have to be selected by the executive council. And
No,
that
it would be selected by the whole IBT.
Yeah, not the executive council, the IBT.
the IBT. Okay.
Yes.
Now to say that, and that's still, and I still have a hard time understanding that. And here's why. The executive council is going to select the president, but are they selecting them only out of the members of the executive council?
Yes, but the IBT selects the, yes, the IBT, the entire 22 people select the president on the recommendation from within the executive council.
Okay, so the executive council now consists of 6 more members. And then what we're saying is that 12 region presidents, along with 6 executive council, and then, or 6 council members. So let's just try to separate it that way. Then we have 4 elected officers, which constitutes the 22 members. But there's one thing that still hasn't happened, and you're saying that the delegates are voting, have a hand in voting on who goes to the executive council, and that's true. But they don't have a hand in it if a region president was voted by his region makes it to the council, then the IBT is then voting that person in as president, but the delegates did not actually have a hand in voting him to the council. His region did.
May I address this one?
Whereas previously, the votes for the 4 presidents, first through 3, were actually voted on at a delegate meeting.
No.
So
I need to interject something I need to interject something that we may have forgotten as a leadership group. So 2 years ago, I guess that would have been in wherever it was, the IBT and the delegates voted that international officers will be elected through a direct vote of the members. So for example, in 2 months from now, every member of the club will directly elect those 7 international officers. It is not going through the delegate process anymore for international officers. So that's something you understand. That is done today. That was decided 2 years ago by the delegates. So again, in 2 months, every member of the club will get an email that says, who do you vote for president, first, second, third, treasurer, and secretary. That is done. It may not have been realized largely in our membership or remembered, but the delegates made that decision last year, I believe it was. So that's why, Artie, it's consistent that in the following years, if this moves forward, the direct membership gets to elect who goes on the executive council, and then the IBT gets to pick from that on who becomes international officers.
Well,
okay, that was it for that clarification.
Okay, thank you, Eric. I'll end my questions right now, because I would be one of the ones that did not know that the delegates voting for international officers was taken away from them 2 years ago. I've been pretty close to what's been going on with the club, and I did not know that their vote was taken away from them for international officers. So
I still think you're confused, Artie. I'm sorry. The vote was not taken away. It's just an individual. Each person votes, not through a delegate.
okay, I understand. So
Each
so
person
it's
now votes for an international officer. We've done this 2 years, I think is the timeline. So each person gets to vote for an officer. Does that help?
Okay. I'll just study it some more. I'll come up with it.
Okay.
We've essentially eliminated a middleman, Artie. The delegate doesn't take the sum of the votes. The votes go directly from the membership to corporate.
Okay, thank you. That's all I've got.
Thank
Okay,
you.
then. Ken Johansson, you're next.
Okay, I understand that the executive committee serves at the pleasure of the IBT. And that there are 22 votes, correct?
In the new executive council, you mean?
No, there's
Presently
12,
with the-
there's 12 on the IBT and 10 on the executive committee.
Well, that'll be the executive council. The executive committee is what we have right now. They don't have 10
I'm
votes.
talking about, that's what I'm saying. The executive council is going to have 10 votes and the
Yes.
IBT has 12 votes.
Yes.
So the executive council, they decide who's going to be president. So that's 10 votes. All they need is 2 more votes to confirm that.
No.
No. The executive council is 10 votes. The region presidents are 12.
Right.
Those combined make the IBT. Those 22 votes will select from the 10 executive council members who holds the actual offices.
That's correct. But the executive council has already made a decision on who they think should be president. So they're probably going to get all 10 votes. Up to
Not
22.
necessarily. Not
Not
necessarily.
necessarily, but let's face it, you got a group here together and they're gonna decide jointly who's gonna be president. So probably, I mean, even if it's 8 out of 10, it's very few votes that are gonna come from the rest of us that are gonna make a difference. That's a fact.
What's your point, Ken?
That's my point.
What is your point?
My point is the vote is going to be stacked and the IBT is not going to have a whole lot of say in who's president.
You know, I would really hope that doesn't happen in the sense that you're trying to portray, Ken. And the reason why is because what is this about? I'm asking in honesty, what is this about? Are we serving ourselves or are we serving a club? If an IBT has strong feelings that one person who really, really wants to be the president is not cut out for it, and they're better suited as an EC member, I would hope and I would expect that those conversations would happen to try to pit us against them. That's old school. That's, you know, what we don't want to see. We want to see a community approach. That's the whole point behind this. If that turns out
you have a committee that's going to elect who's going to say this person should be president, and the committee is going to get together, and the committee's probably going to come to a consensus on who they think should be president of their group, of their 10 people. That's going to happen.
The person who is elected, the person who's elected as president is president of the IBT and international president of the club. It is not president of the executive council.
I understand that. The executive council, though, is the one who's going to say who the president is, right or wrong, correct or not correct?
Not
correct. I would hope completely not correct. I would hope that the point of this is a lot more working together, a lot more of understanding why we're doing this in the first place. And the single biggest reason, in my opinion, is to address some long-range planning goals, which have not been allowed to be addressed. Looking at it from a totally different format of, yeah, I want to hold the roses and walk down the runway and be the president. Those days hopefully are behind us. Hopefully we're moving toward directing this club as a club.
So help me understand. My understanding is of this executive council, you're going to have 10 members, of which one of them will be elected or suggested as being the international president, correct?
Yes.
Okay. That's my point.
Wait a second. I think, I don't know that I've heard, and I may have missed something. I don't know who's going to come forward and say these are the candidate or candidates for international president. I personally would like to see that still lie within the nominating committee responsibilities, that they will then contact the 10 people on the executive council. Are you interested in running for any of these positions? And at that point, they don't have to make any kind of a judgment because the club membership has already elected them to the seat at the board. They just need to find out who's interested. And if 3 people say, I'm interested in running for international president, then those 3 names are presented to the IBT, and the IBT votes, not the council, the IBT.
I have been told that one of the members of the executive council will be president.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
correct,
Yes.
right?
One
Okay.
of the members of the executive council will be president
And how will that be decided?
by a vote
How will
from
the executive council decide who they want to be president?
It's not the executive council deciding, it's the region presidents and the people on the executive council. Those are the two.
But
Those are the two.
one of the members of the executive council is going to be president, correct?
Yes,
So who presents that person to the IBT?
the nominating committee. The nominating committee will hold the cards of who wants to run for an office on the executive council. They will present that to the region presidents and the executive council, and that's when the vote will take place.
Right, but the executive council will be the one to say, we want this person to be president, or we're suggesting that this person be president.
No.
The nominating committee.
Nominating committee.
And I would like.
Which
and I would
currently
like-
is structured
Then
in the
that's new then, because I was
sir.
originally told.
No.
No, sir, the nominating committee has been around for multiple years.
I understand that, but when I got a phone call about this, I was told that the nominating committee would decide who would be best to be, I'm sorry, the council would decide to be best, who would best be president because of skills required and that sort of thing, and that they would determine who their member of the council would be president.
Yeah.
That's what I was told.
Well, if you're talking about my conversation with you, Ken, that is not what I said. I can guarantee you that. Let me finish saying, I've worked with nomination committees for years and years and years, and it is a function of the whole board. The nomination committee will be a function of some people in the executive committee, some people on the rest of the IBT, and maybe some outside people. They're the people in this club who have done this for probably 40 years, come up with a slate of recommended officers. That's the way it's always happened. That is the way it's intended. And when that slate of officers, and to Karen's point, hopefully it's more than a couple for president and vice president positions, they get voted on by the 22 people of the executive of the IBT. That's how it's working, period. That's always been envisioned. Sorry if you don't understand it, but I've been clear about this from day one. It kind of irritates me, frankly, keep circling back on this.
Okay, let's remember one thing here, okay? If you're not on the special committee to answer a question by the members answering, raise your hand to talk. We are not going to lose control of this meeting. We're not going to turn it into a fight, okay? Be respectful of each other, keep an open mind, and we don't need people hopping on and off by saying their 2 cents in there. If you have a question, let the special committee members, and Jenny, I'm going to have you announce those members again here in a minute. If you're not one of those members, raise your hand and your comment will be taken care of in order that it's come in.
May I say just one more thing to conclude? I'm not trying to pick a fight in any way. I'm just trying to make sure we all understand how this is going to work.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Jenny, can you tell the people who's on your committee?
One moment. I think Ken had one more thing he wanted to say.
I said it. I said I'm not trying to pick a fight by any means.
Oh.
All I'm trying to do is clarify and make sure that we understand what.
Do you
what
feel
we're
like
doing.
your answer was clarified, or your question was clarified?
It wasn't a question. It was an opinion.
Okay.
All right.
Go ahead, Jenny.
The people on our committee, we have Bill Wild. Bill, can you wave?
Yes.
We have Brad Briggs.
It's actually Bill. It's Bill and my one VP, Chris Baum.
Well, this is our committee that I'm introducing.
She's talking about the committee.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
She's just
Okay.
introducing the committee, Bill.
Yes, thank you. And Brad is driving. Hi, Brad. We have Tom Smithson. Can you wave? Thank you. Bard Fuller. Kathy Giese. And Chris Seplak.
Hey, everybody.
Thank you. Okay, now, Bill, you can talk.
Thanks, Ty. I don't know if this is true across the country, but my VPs are holding the March 9th report, which still has in it the possibility of coming back after a 2-year break and a couple of other things. It appears that we did not get the latest version of this report disseminated to all of the players before they came on this call. So we can't fix that, but let's at least make sure that that goes out after this meeting, if we can commit to that.
Bill, I'd like to address that because it was in the Zoom invitation. After the Zoom information, right underneath it, there's more text and it had several links to all the reports, the website and everything.
Okay, Laura, thank you, Lori. We'll go check that out. If we find that it's the old one, we'll let you know, okay?
I'll resend it anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll make sure you get that. Thank you.
And now, if I may, because my hand counts for 2 people, Chris has 2 questions.
I have a question in regards to the actual IBT motion. And it's in regards to the fact that under Exhibit 2, Section 4, it says a quorum of the Board of Trustees shall consist, well, I'm questioning about the number for the quorum that we are going to use to call a meeting. I have it down as 12 out of 22 would be considered a quorum. Many of our clubs are based on 60% being the quorum, and 60% would be 13. So that's one question I have.
That's a Joanne question or answer.
Go ahead, Joanne.
The quorum can be whatever the group decides to include in the motion or in the governing documents. If nothing is stated about the quorum, then the quorum is assumed to be at least 51%, so that you have the majority. So when this was passed, it was decided that they wanted to say that the quorum was 12 members.
I was just wondering, my concern was being consistent throughout the entire club structure. Do the majority of our clubs use 60% or do they use 51%? I could be mistaken, Joanne.
Some of the clubs, actually, the quorum needs to be the number of members who can reasonably be expected to attend a meeting unless there is severe weather. So each club is able to decide what their own quorum can be.
Okay. Okay.
So we're at 55% now, and that's perfectly okay because it's greater than the 51.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The second concern I have is the incredible task that we are putting on the nominating committee. If the nominating committee is only coming up with 9 people that will be elected in the odd years, it then becomes basically a rubber stamp. If we only get 9, is there going to be some sort of guidelines developed that we will always have a slate of 15, of which we will select 9? There's been no, we've not talked about that at all. And so much hinges to me on that slate of officers and how we are going to get them. And then what is going to be the determination for who becomes the candidates, you know, who wins the 9? There's all those questions. Does it become a simple, whoever gets the most votes Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay. Those-
The top 9.
The top 9, okay. So I just am very concerned about how that nominating committee is going to be structured, how people are going to be able to put their names in for candidacy, how they're going to be vetted, you know, how many are we always going to have, as I said, on the slate. I just am very concerned about the nominating committee process. And then to echo that on the last question that was raised, is from that nominating committee, then how is the IBT going to determine who's going to be the officers? Granted, we're going to vote, the IBT will vote, but how are we going? Is it going to be at the direction of the nominating committee as to who we're going to be looking at for international president, who we're going to look at for vice president? There's so much that is undetermined at this point. If we go ahead with this, that's where my concerns lie.
I have 2 comments. One is that you're right. A lot is going to hinge on the nominating committee, meaning it's really got to ramp up and be an effective committee. But these elections are only every 2 years. So that does give a lot more time to further this process rather than the short circuit of 1 year. So that's a big plus. The second comment I would like to ask our members. The nominating process was outside of the venue that we were asked to look at in this transition team. So we are not speaking from I myself, I won't say our team, they may have a whole lot more knowledge. I can't speak from any experience level about the nominating committee because it wasn't something that we looked into with any in-depth purview because we simply were not tasked to do that. And I think there probably needs to be then, okay, we've gotten to this point, now let's look real strongly at, okay, let's lay these parameters out for a nominating committee to look at. That is most likely the next scenario. But I would like Tom Smithson to weigh in on this. He has a lot of information.
Wow.
Excuse me, and we'll follow that up with Kathy Giese too.
Well, to begin with, anyone who is a member of WBCCI may run for any position where the membership would be electing them. There are criteria which are in the policies, if people will look at those, which describe the responsibilities of the international president, which describe the responsibilities of region presidents. And these are all items which I have discussed with the members of this group in quote training sessions. But the issue here is to find people who are passionate about the club, who have tools and capabilities that they can bring to the administrative side of the club through the executive council. This is not the vetting process. As a person who has actually sat on the nominating committee one year, the vetting process is not so much of what or how capable you are, but are you really passionate about doing this particular job? Do you realize or understand and accept the responsibilities that are associated with the job? These are the things that you need to be looking for. You also should be looking at people who have capabilities and that passion who want to or would be willing to serve on the executive council. There's no set criteria. It's no different, and if I can be somewhat political for the moment, it's no different than electing the president of the United States. Now, some people are highly qualified for that job. Other people are not qualified for that job based upon their experience and their background. Some of them unqualified have extreme passion about the job and do a spectacular job. Others, yeah, whatever. So what you're looking for really are people who want to serve the club. It's not so much that you're going out and saying, well, this person is going to be a spectacular leader. We don't know that. And we won't know that until you put them in a position where they can demonstrate that. But what we are looking for are people who really have a passion for the club and are willing and capable of serving the club. So, from the standpoint of the nominations standing committee, I am in the process of trying to strengthen that. I've written a motion to do that, which is really going to be predicated on whether this restructuring motion goes through. There's a whole bunch of motions that have been my committee and others have been working on for probably 6 months to address the significant number of changes that are going to have to occur if this restructuring amendment goes through. If it does, all of that stuff that's in the Constitution right now talking about the responsibilities of the Board of Trustees and the Executive Committee are going to be moved to the bylaws. And that particular section, if what I have been working on comes to fruition, is going to be very extensive, addressing many of the questions which have come up here. It will be presented to the IBT and be available to the membership later, once we've kind of have got our feet on the ground and moving towards the delegates meeting and the election. It may never see the light of day, because if this amendment for restructuring is not passed, then all bets are off. We simply stay the way we are, with the only exception being a change, I think, in the nominations standing committee. There's going to be a definite need to make some changes there. I don't know whether I've answered anyone's questions or not, but I think you need to understand that we're trying to get people in this executive council who have a willingness and a passion to volunteer. Nobody's paying them to do this job. Volunteer to serve the club and to serve the membership of the club. Those people are going to be elected by the members to that council. How they get to be an officer is really immaterial, because you need to understand we're changing the structure of the club. We're no longer going to be you are elected third vice president and you're going to move through the chairs and you're going to become president. We are electing a group of people who are going to be able to bring additional skills and knowledge to the administrative side of the club. And amongst those, we have to have a chair to run the meeting. And so we elect a president. And ideally, you ought to have a secretary and a treasurer to be able to take care of the financial and the recording side. But it's not the same. It's definitely not the same as we currently have. And you need to get that firmly in your mind. This is not the same. It's a totally different structure, and it is one which I think we should definitely look forward to. I would like to look forward to it anyway. Now, if that helps, fine. If not, then I'm done.
Okay, Tom, thank you.
Kathy was going to make a comment about the nominating committee.
Okay.
And again, this was outside the scope of what we were tasked with, but we're human. And we did, of course, talk about how is some of this going to work out. And I think we all, and jump in, team members, if you disagree with me, but I think what we were looking at addresses what Ken brings up. I think the IBT needs to be a collaborative group. not an us versus them. And to his point of, well, can those 10 people all just, push in their candidate? Well, on the other side, the 12 region presidents could do the same thing. We want to get away from that to where we all work together. Our goal is that we are serving our membership, not that we're growing our own little fiefdom. I would, as far as how many people should be voted on, I'd like to see 30 members from across the country, an incredibly diverse group that come forward and maybe develop a voter's pamphlet, so to speak, something like that. So we're truly giving our membership a choice about who do they think really will serve and represent them best on this executive council. And then from that, then the IBT will then choose collaboratively who will be the best officers to serve in those positions. So I'm just reiterating a lot of what Tom said, but I feel very strongly about this. I have served on boards. I've been involved at all different levels with volunteer organizations. And I really think that this is a very needed move. That's it.
Thank you, Kathy.
Is my mic on behalf of the transition team, Ty?
Yes.
All right. One of the other things that we discussed, even though the non-com was not actually our responsibility, one of the things we discussed was that it's no longer going to be good enough to just say, yeah, I want to throw my name in the hat. Those candidates who are asking to be considered for placement and a seat on the new EC need to submit a CV that needs to have something for the nominating committee to use to determine who's going to be in that pool. And those things need to stay with the process all the way up until the IBT sits to determine who's going to fill the administrative positions on the EC. Because as a region officer, as a region president, I might not know that individual, but I certainly know how to read a resume or a CV. And I think that those kind of qualifications need to be made available so that we can make educated decisions about who should fill those positions rather than just, personality decisions.
Yeah.
And then the one other comment that I wanted to make is that in my analysis of what that committee needs to do, the NOMCOM, they need to poll the existing EC. This is second and later generations, okay? They need to poll to see who is planning on coming off. That NOMCOM needs to know if they anticipate a treasury vacancy to make sure that they have some treasurer qualified candidates in that pool. So that's part of what the NOMCOM will have to do, but then also the IBT needs to be better educated to vote. That was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Jenny, I'm going to request that we take a 5-minute break. We've been at this an hour and 20 minutes, and I'm sure some people need to get up and move around. So it is 3:20 right now. So at 3:25, we'll be back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lori?
Who said my name?
Brad.
Hi, Brad.
I just was trying to figure out if my mic was on because it's hard for me to tell. So thank you.
You've been doing great.
Hey, Lori.
Yes.
Lori, it's Chris.
Hi, Chris.
I'm going to get off here. My time is up here. I got to get back to work. So if anybody calls on me, just tell them I have to go back to work.
Okay. Thanks for letting me know.
Chris,
Okay,
thank you so
thanks.
much. Chris, thank
No
you. It's
problem,
been,
Jen.
yeah, thank you. Have a good
Okay,
rest of your
we'll
day.
talk to you later.
Okay, bye.
Thanks, you too. Bye.
Jenny,
Yes.
this is Brad.
Hi, Brad.
Hi. I'd like to also address when we come back, if it's okay, the comment by Christine about only having 9 candidates. I have an answer for that I'd like to give.
I think that would be wonderful. Thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
Lori, are you still on? Well, she's not necessarily gone. She's just out of sight because I've got the gallery going.
Because it really is, we are very handicapped by the fact that that's the only one I found.
We're not muted.
Oh, Bob's on. Huh?
Where are you headed, Brad? I'm headed to Region 3 rally in Hiawassee, Georgia. Looked like you had a really nice trip.
Oh, the last one?
Yeah,
Yep.
your Facebook. Yeah. I didn't quite get where you went. You went to France or?
Yeah, south of France.
Nice. What town did you visit? Did you multiple or just one?
So I went outside of Nice, which is, we actually have a house there that we bought in 1990. The intent was to, I mean, life is so full of surprises. I moved down to the south of France in the mid 80s. Well, I actually didn't move. I went down for 3 weeks and I stayed for 9 years. And then they asked that if I could move to the US on an assignment. And they said, it's a 1-year deal and you'll get a green card. I said, I don't want that. I want a 2-way ticket. So they gave me a relocation contract. So I came to stay here for 3 years. I've been here for 29. And as I came over, the plan was, oh, I'm just going to move back. So I'll keep the house, I'll rent it out. And so years go by and decades go by. And I'm getting to the point now, what am I going to do with this house? So the last tenants have just left. So now it was sort of decision time. Sell it or keep it.
Yeah.
Okay, we're back to 3:24, so 1 minute warning.
John and I went to Aix-en-Provence 2 years ago, and it was everything it took everything for us to leave it. It was so beautiful. We loved it.
It's a nice part of France.
Yeah, it's just lovely. Sweetest people too. Oh my gosh.
That was actually something I remembered from when we lived there, how rude people were. And I came back and it's like, what happened? Everybody's so nice. You go into the doors and like, they're not insulting you or anything like that. That was
They were charming.
A
Yeah.
positive
It's
shock, actually.
Such a difference from Paris. I just can't believe the difference from Paris.
Okay, we're at 3:25, so let's begin this up again. Okay, Artie, you're the first one up. Artie, are you there?
Is Lori back yet?
Yes, everybody's back.
I'm not seeing her. Lori, we just double checked and it is the March 9th version that is out there on the web. So we need to get you the latest version for folks to be able to look at.
Okay, we'll have to check, but
I
I don't
will-
know what you mean by web.
I will make sure that you have that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jenny.
You bet.
Okay,
Hi,
go ahead,
this
Artie.
is Brad. May I something to Christine's question?
Okay, you're breaking up there, Brad. Try again.
I would like to add something to Christine's question if you will allow me.
Okay, go ahead.
Certainly.
Address. Thank you. So Christine had said, what if we only get 9 members at an election? And it's not the case. We'd like to see more of an actual- There's really no difference for having now. Typically, we have one person
Brad?
running for the 3rd VP, and that's the
You're really breaking up, Brad. We can hardly understand you.
okay. That's okay. I'll skip it then. Never mind.
We'll come back to you, Brad. Think of it, maybe you'll get a little closer on a reception tower.
Yeah, I understand. I heard I knew the point you're going for, and that was a good analogy. So anyway, go ahead, Ty.
Okay,
Artie.
Artie, you're up.
Yes. Okay, let me talk and then somebody stop me when I say something that's not true. How's that sound? This is a new game I'll play now. Nominating committee still nominates. They try to do some vetting. Hopefully, in this particular new scenario, they're able to nominate or recommend 15 candidates. Some of those candidates might actually be region presidents. So those nominated candidates are going to go to the 6-member executive committee. The executive committee is going to do further vetting, and they're going to make a selection. Now, they're not going to make a selection. They're going to select the candidates that will be voted on. Now, nobody stopped me yet.
I don't think that's true. I
I'm
don't think
not
that's-
certain. Yeah,
that's not
you're not.
No, I'm not saying that they're selecting the candidates. I'm just saying that the
No.
6.
No.
Okay,
No, the whole process already was wrong.
well, there's still a nominating committee, right?
Yes,
And they're going to nominate contestants.
yes.
Let's hope they do 15. So,
Yes.
so where does the new executive council come in?
So the 15 contestants, that's a good word for it too. The 15 contestants, the nominating came up with, the membership, all 16,000 plus that we have right now will vote out of those 15 to fill 9 spots on the executive council. And it's 9 because you got your past president already in there, your PIP. So once those 9 are in a seat of the executive council, then those people with all the region presidents will vote together to determine the officers of the executive council.
And the officers of the executive council do not have a vote.
No, they will have a vote. You can vote for yourself.
Okay, all right, okay, fine. Okay, so so now the executive council is, once they're in place. Now what we're talking about there is we're going to put the executive council in place and the membership's going to vote them in.
You've
Okay.
got that.
Okay, now, once we leave that area, the next round comes in the next year, and the nominating committee brings in another 15. Now, there's going to be only 3 seats to replace on the executive council.
No, you're confusing the first transition year with the rest of the process. Already every single 2 years. If you read through the report, the transition year is a unique little one-time shot.
That's why I said in the second year. The first year, they're just going to operate all six of them.
The first year, 7 of them go in.
Right, I understand that.
3 vacant seats. And there's
Right.
nobody going to fill those seats. Our recommendation is leave them empty. And the reason why we recommend leaving them empty is because it's going to be a big job to try to get all the candidates aligned for the 2023 election. And there's simply no time for this nominating committee, which has already finished its job, by the way, for this year by bringing Millie forth. They already are done. They've convened. So for us to ask them to reconvene, I mean, they're dismissed. So to reconvene them to try to find these 3 seats in such a short amount of time, it isn't worth it, because those folks simply wouldn't even be in position more than 4 or 5 months. So we're going to set that year aside.
Okay. So you re-explained the transition year. That's fine. Let's go to year 2, because that's what I'm talking about. So
yes, so
year number 2. Now we have 6 executive council seats. We have 12 region presidents. That's what we're going to have, right?
Artie, you need to understand, it's actually 10 executive council seats, not 6. It's 10.
He was saying that we only have 6 instead of 9 because we left 3 seats empty. But
every single 2 years, no matter who's sitting or not sitting on that executive council, they must run again.
So it's 7 and then it's 10. What's going to happen in year 3? The nominating committee is going to bring in 10 nominees for 3 seats.
No, Artie, we only elect every 2 years. So we elect in 2022 for a 1-year position. Then in 2023, the 9 people that are elected plus the past president's position are the 10 seats. They're there for 2 years. We won't have elections again until 2025 for a new executive council. And all positions are up.
Okay, but the region presidents will still alternate odd, even years?
Yes. Yes. Nothing changes in the regions, nothing changes in the local clubs.
Okay, here's the bottom line, and this goes back to the gentleman before who thinks that the vote's going to be stacked. I forget his name. If we're looking at it that both the 10-member council and the 12-member region all have an equal vote, and you're bringing in from the nominating committee 10 people to be vetted and then put on a ballot to vote for. Some of those people to sit on the seats may also even be region presidents at that time. So I agree that the council could start off a little bit strong because they do have 10 members. That's true. But the region presidents have 12. So I am a little concerned about the stacking, but I wouldn't want the executive council, the 10 members, to narrow it down to 1 member and they get to select that member for president. It should be an equal vote between 10 candidates on the executive council and 12 region presidents voting. Am I correct?
Yes.
You are correct.
Okay, well then I don't see how it could be stacked.
Absolutely correct.
And if there's multiple candidates to be selected, if they bring in, and we've got 7 people that want to become vice president of the international and president of the international, we've got 7 candidates that have thrown their name in the hat. Even if you got 10 votes out of the executive council for the same 2 people, you've got 12 region members. And you need a majority, and a region has a majority to begin with. So I understand his point about the stacking of the votes, but I also understand that as long as the executive council isn't selecting just 1 candidate, and there's a multitude of candidates to vote from, then there can't be any stacking.
Yeah, completely.
And that's what I'm trying to get clear in my head, because I was concerned about the same thing that he was. Because it felt like at the beginning, like the region presidents their vote was going to be taken from a 1 vote down to 0.66 votes, because the size of the council was reducing their vote. And that's not the case.
That's not the
So,
case. Thank you.
that's
Thank
not-
you for making that point. I agree.
Okay, so, okay, well then, but once again, if there's only one candidate available, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen the day, you know? What if there's only two candidates, you know?
Well, if there's only one candidate and none of the 12 IBT want them, they don't pass as a majority, do they?
No, they don't.
All right, so they go back to the drawing board and say, this is not somebody, you know, let's say I went to hypnosis school and I figured out a way to hypnotize my entire executive council and I told them they have to vote for me and I'm the least qualified person. Well, the IBT wasn't in the session where I hypnotized everybody and they say, absolutely not. We are not voting for this person, go back to the drawing board. So yes, there is definitely the potential for everybody to feel strongly about one candidate, and it could be great, but it also could be the other way around.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Okay.
Well, I hope I helped the other gentleman by trying to explain it in my mind that it just seemed as though that the control of the 10-member council could actually have a control of the vote. But once again, if the nominating committee is sending the people in, and there's multiple candidates to choose from, and the IBT and the council have equal vote at 22 votes, I don't see how there can be stacking. So
thank you for making that point, Artie. Thank you very much.
I want to remind everybody, unless you're on the special committee, raise your hand, okay? Ken Johansson, you're up next. Ken, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I'm hearing differing thoughts and opinions on how this thing has been presented. And I'm also hearing that the nominating committee role has not been fleshed out yet. And so what I'm wondering, my question is I'm wondering if we should have a roundtable discussion at the International where all the members who are there can hear all these pros and cons and maybe participate in some of these ideas, because there's a lot of stuff that, in my opinion, has not been fleshed out yet. That's my comment.
Thank you, Kent. Anybody want to address that, or?
Ken, you're right. You're completely right. There are parts of this that are not fleshed out. They're not, the nominating committee is not clear. Criteria are not clear. The process to vote is clear. The direction we're heading with this recommendation of how the EC is structured is clear. The interaction with the IBT is clear. But the biggest unknown question mark, in my opinion, is the nominating committee. I think as we've talked, we need people to put together, how do you get from this point into the EC? And that's through the nominating committee. And until that process is truly, and I'll borrow your term, I like it, truly fleshed out. You know, can we vote on part of this? I would imagine we could. This part's clear, whether you like it or not, it is still clear. The nominating committee is not clear. And I think that would do well with some serious scrutiny.
See, I don't think you can vote on it. I don't think you can vote on this until all of that is made clear, in my opinion.
Thank you for your opinion.
Thank you. Okay, Perry, you're next. You're muted.
I know. This is a relatively complex topic, the overall discussion that we're having. And the way I tend to think about it is, first, as I explained to others, is to talk about where we are today. It's a recap, because not everybody is familiar with the rules, how they are in place today before we even take this motion up for a vote. The second thing is to talk about where we want to be. And look at how this is going to function when we are done. Then finally, we can talk about the bridge. because I think the bridge can make this all very confusing. It's actually just a transition window. And, you know, we want to be in the right place at the end of the road. So that's this one comment. The second one is that as an organization, I think we need to embrace the idea that we want to have multiple applicants per job opening. This preordainment or rubber stamping is really not very healthy. When we had a conversation about restructuring committees, one of the things I pointed out is that we essentially lack a volunteer HR department. All we have is an organization that are nominating people. We don't have anybody who's out there putting job postings in place and making sure that we have a big line of candidates in the queue. I mean, in a normal job environment at work, people are asked to put together a job description for a potential slot that is going to open, and then it is approved and you post the job posting in some public forum. And you obviously want as many candidates as possible. And then you go through an interviewing process and then you pick the best candidate out of the lot. So if we could be more proactive in doing that as an organization, like we list all the jobs and we want everybody to apply. And generally speaking, if I apply for a job on the outside, I don't hesitate because I know somebody else applied. And here, sometimes people are concerned about stepping on other people's toes because they hear so-and-so has applied. Oh, I'm not going to apply then. And I think some of that is tied to us being at times, personality focused rather than team focused. I think I apply because there's a job that I'm interested in, and let the best person be selected by the incoming, by the management of that organization. And I'd like for us to be operating the same way. So maybe the NomCom would transition to a sort of a volunteer engagement and succession committee that thinks about not just about nominating somebody into a position, but figures out to, constantly stuff the pipeline with candidates to champion the opening. So we don't get into this, bang every time we're going to have the vote. Rather, it's an ongoing process. Yeah, we've got job openings. We need, do you want to be trained? Do you want to know what it's all about? Get your name in the hat. Here's the date by which you have to have it in by, because there's a certain deadline for getting it all in. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Per. And next is Jan.
Okay, I just had a question about this NomCom committee. I was on it this year and will, if I understand properly, will be on it again next year. The one group that will become presidents next year, they roll off and somebody else comes on. But will this have to be restructured? Will it have to, be changed to have this committee, or will we stay in place? I mean, how will that work?
Nobody quite knows yet. And I believe it will have to change quite dramatically. I think it will be an ongoing, not task-driven committee, but more to address Per's perspective, an ongoing committee that is constantly looking, searching. I would love to see where potential candidates get to shadow the EC, get invited to IBT meetings to see what they're like, to sit in a day with the treasurer or the secretary or a position they might be interested in the future, to engage them a lot more completely. So I do believe the nominating committee will need a full revamp.
Okay.
Could I just jump in real quick here, because I will tell you that considering everything that's been going on, I personally, with a couple of others, have been looking at how we could restructure the nominations standing committee. And I have some fairly significant changes that, once again, would not come until July 30th, give or take a little bit, as a motion to the IBT. But it is very important. And I would like to point out again to Per and to all of you that in the charge of the nominations committee, is the fact that they are to use all of the communication tools that are available to them through the club and through social media, etc., to look for people. I don't know whether that was ever done or not, but it is part of their charge. Thank you.
Thank you,
May I,
Tom.
Ty?
Yes, Bill.
Essentially, what we're doing is saying that the NomCom is HR. They're going to be the collector of applications, the pre-qualifier to see if the candidate actually is even a potential fit. And then that goes to management, where management makes the decisions about who goes into what position. So the may I be so bold as to suggest?
Bill, you're still there.
We're still here, although my ears are ringing. May I suggest, Mr. Chairman, that perhaps we do need to have someone look at the NomCom a little bit further. I don't know if that's a separate committee or if it falls back on us, but that seems to be a big sticking point for people.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Anything else? Okay, then you're all set, Jan. This is Linda Shelton's next.
How about Jan?
We just had Jan.
Okay, I'm going to just throw this out there to you. I'm going to be fishing. Back 25 years ago, there used to be many, many people running for different offices in the international. It was maybe a prestige thing to serve this club. And in the last few years, we're doing good getting one candidate a year, where there used to be 3 or 4. So my question is this, how is this new structure going to help that?
That is such a great question, Linda. That is the $1 million question. You're right. And that is a big hope, is that in a restructure such as this, things become a lot more attractive. One of the challenges that in addressing this in our first session, in our first team run by Jim Cock, was brought forth that it is so cumbersome to get to the position to be running for third VP right now, due to the fact that it's being seen as a region president is a significant, important part of being ready to ascend into the chairs, and that the number of years that can take. So it felt very cumbersome, that it wasn't particularly an engaging spot. And so it limited the number of people that felt they were qualified. This EC structure, this new platform of a board run rather than a hierarchy run, allows people to enter in, even if they haven't been leaders at a local club or even a regional club level. And they can sit on the EC for 2 years as a member. And if they're interested in an officer position, and if everybody agrees that they may be a good candidate for that, they may be submitted for an officer position. It brings people that perhaps are younger or older or have different lifestyles that maybe hadn't lent themselves to engagement before, to now suddenly engage without that real long track in. So I'm hopeful that just this platform, and also not having to be an officer and still serving on the council, I'm very, very optimistic that that will encourage a lot of people that were overwhelmed by that backlog of years and years needing to be engaged in this club before being considered for a leadership role, that this would encourage them to want to participate. Can I guarantee it? Absolutely not. Why can't I turn the clock back 25 years and get all those people excited again? Because life is very, very different. And most people do not have the time for things that they did in the past, but we still want them. And so maybe what we need to do is look at ways to make, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Make these bites more palatable.
Anything else, Linda?
Kinda. I feel like I'm so, y'all, everybody put your rocks down. Please don't throw them at me. I have to disagree about going up the chairs because that, okay, I'm going to give you this analogy. You've got two men that started a company and both companies were very successful. They had young sons. The one president or owner put his son in as first vice president. He didn't know squat about the business, but he put him in there as first vice president. Then you've got this other company owner that he made his son start at the bottom of the company. He learned every aspect, every step of what needed to be done to run that company. That's where I've come from. I started at the bottom and I learned about this club. And what you're trying to kind of do is just let somebody come in. And because, yes, they've got all this corporate learning and stuff, but do they really know what this club is all about is my question. And I'm going to shut up now so y'all don't throw any rocks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Linda. Okay, Karen.
Okay, this is kind of in response to Ken's comment about how can we make sure that all this information gets out to all of our members and answer all of their questions. I think if we wait to the international rally, it's too late. And it has been suggested, and I couldn't tell you if it was in a personal conversation, one of our current EC meetings, if it was when the transition committee made their first report to the EC, but it was suggested that part of rolling this all out to our membership was to schedule several web-based Zoom type calls, town hall type things where we could do a quick presentation of what has been done in anticipation of trying to answer questions, but then let people ask questions at that meeting and have the transition team be there to answer it. So I'm going to throw that out. Is that I believe that's something we can do with our current technology and our current Zoom accounts. So, I mean, it's going to take some organizing and some planning, but I think it's something that could be done. At least schedule a first one and see what the response is. And if we need to limit who can come or how many can come and we see that there's interest, we'll hold more. But I want to throw that out. And I think, Ken, that'll help answer, your concern that all of our members understand what's being presented.
Okay. Thank you, Karen.
That is great because I don't know if you know this, but there is a communications team. And we have met and we are putting together all of these things that you're sharing. And so I really like that you didn't even know that and you brought this up. Eric's hand is up next. And in fact, I'm going to, I don't want to step on your toes, Eric, with your comments, but I also would like you to comment about the communications team and some of the directions we are taking.
Well, I'm going to leave that to Lori because she's actually leading it. I just help with the website back end, but I wanted to comment on the nominations committee. I as some of you may know, I think this is the most important thing in front of us that we as a club have to figure out how to do well. Having gone through the process, I personally believe that it's broken. I'll use those words now. Over the last 3 or 4 years, as first, second, third VP, whatever, you do end up talking to people in the club about what it's like to be first, second, or third, what it's like ramping up to president. And you all may not be surprised that there are a lot of people nowadays, and this is to Linda's comment, who just don't want to serve. And we see this in our local clubs. I would imagine most of your local clubs, your units, are having challenges finding first, second, third VPs and presidents. I imagine the regions are the same way. So this is not something unique to international. We are in an environment right now where it's hard to get people to volunteer. There's a wonderful book called Bowling Alone that talks about the sort of the decline of social clubs. You know, remember the bowling alleys, the knitting clubs, the all the other clubs, right? And so we are in that environment. What I have heard though a lot about, this is why I'm excited about the nominations committee, is that a lot of people over this last couple of months have said, oh, you mean I can volunteer to apply to go on the board for just 2 years and kind of help out a little bit and then step off. I don't want to be president. I don't want to be first vice president. I don't want to be, and the answer is yeah, if this passes, you absolutely can. So I think the nominations committee will be faced with a different objective in front of them. It used to be the nominations committee was slated with finding one person, a third VP, who would agree to essentially be president in 3 years and then first VP. That task has completely changed if this passes. Now it's looking for people with a strong interest in the club, excitement in the club, a range of backgrounds, and they want to just be put up for vote by the members. So I'm really excited if this goes forward, but I really would stress also that I don't know, Ty, it's probably up to you if the group decides to have some people look at it, you know, and come back with some recommendations, because I do think it needs to get addressed. And I think this will succeed or fail based on how strong and broad a nominations committee, how well they do their job. We don't want rubber stamps. Okay, that's it for me.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, Laverne, before I introduce you, anybody that hasn't talked yet and you need to say something, you need to get your hand up. Okay, we want to hear from everybody, but go ahead, Laverne.
Okay, I served on the nominating committee a few years back, and you know, it was actually voted on by the delegates back then. Everyone voted. The membership even voted on who was on the nominating committee. We had to interview, submit resumes, and so I at that time thought, okay, this is a great position, and I was really excited about being on the committee. I was new to the club in that respect, and so I saw my role on the nominating committee as being the person that asked sort of the dumb questions, which I did. But I was really surprised when I realized that we nominated someone, and that's basically the person the club is going to vote on. We don't have a choice today. This is the slate. Here are our options. You either vote or you don't vote, but that's who we're voting for. And I don't look at this restructure as being, we're voting on a president. We're voting on a council. We're voting, that's what the membership is voting for. It's a council. The exact positions, yes, they lead the group, but they don't make all the determinations. It's not the president has all the power. It's a council. So I look at this as giving our members a much broader, much more power, if you will, of putting all these members forward to serve the club. And yes, we had difficulty finding a candidate. And a lot of that was based on time, right? You have to serve as third, you have, move yourself up. And granted, it's a position, it's learning about the club structure and how we run, but it shouldn't take 4 years to do that. It really shouldn't. I also foresee and hope that people understand this, in that the candidates that come forward, I really, truly hope that everyone understands the skill sets needed. It's not the IT person only, it's not the corporate manager. And I'll pick on Joe the plumber, because we are currently in the middle of a huge house remodel, and Joe the plumber is one of the guys that's being subcontracted to work here. And I watch him. He has to manage his crew. He has to manage his resources. He has to manage his time, and he has to deal with customers. That's a skill set right there. So we're talking about Joe the plumber that you would never even think of. And by the way, his name is Joe the plumber. So, you know, these are the skill sets that we need. So it's not just a certain group of people. It's a council that we're looking for, right? So I look at this as a much better structure for us. I also don't feel our current structure has to be broken in order to improve it or fix it, right? If it's broken, we have all failed. So we can't wait till it's broken. We need to serve our members better. And I think this does it. And that's all I had to say.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Kathy Giese.
I just want to add on to what Laverne was saying and kind of in response a little bit to Linda as well. One of the things that I've come through, and maybe I'm in a unique region, who knows, but our demographics have changed dramatically over the last 25 years. We have a lot of 2-job families. There's not, you know, a person that's staying at home that can do all this volunteer work. People are busy. People also, I like to say 70 is the new 50. I'd like to think that, but the, you know, people, I heard Per and Jennifer talking about traveling internationally. I think there was a point in time where this club served as a country club, so to speak, or a social gathering for people. And that was pretty much what all they did for their travel. That's not true in my territory. People are traveling in all kinds of different ways, sometimes with the Airstream group and sometimes without them. So with this, I'm hoping that we start recruiting some people that, again, like Laverne was saying, have the skill set. No, you don't have to be IT. No, you don't have to have background as a lawyer. You don't have to be a CPA. You don't have to do all those. But people that have can respond and volunteer, and we can do a lot of things as a group. My first vice president, I would have loved to have had her sit in on this. She works 60 hours a week. She travels internationally. She can't. You know, we need to be meeting the needs of what our demographics are now, not what they were in the past. And that's my soapbox.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Per?
There. Yeah, it was in response to Linda's comment regarding sort of climbing the ladder in the organization versus coming off the street. I in some respects have climbed the ladder since I've been all the way down as a unit president, but I don't think that's a necessary path to move into the club or move into international officer position. I think there are many paths into this. You know, we're fairly seasoned individuals and we have broad life experiences prior to joining the club. Some of us have been with the club for a while, but just because you've just joined doesn't mean you don't have extremely valuable life experience that we can draw on. So I think both paths are viable paths into office. And in terms of, you know, selecting the candidates that would go into office, I think we need to look for the candidates that can move us where we want to be, as opposed to being very familiar with how things were done in the past. I'm sure we can find plenty of candidates that know how things were done in the past. And some of the things that were done in the past are just not the way society works anymore. We need to think a little bit out of the box. And sometimes it helps to get people from outside of the ranks to, you know, mix it up a little bit. And I think I really have to say, I like the proposal about the council model, because I'm a big fan of teamwork. So I think as an organization that we work as a team, and I don't think of the division that I think Ken is fearing of this us versus them at the, you know, EC versus the IBT. I think we need to really work as a single team. We have different areas that we take care of, but we need to collectively move the club forward. That's all I have.
Thank you, Per. Lori, you're next.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to touch base on the communication. Somebody was talking. As you've seen, we're working on a website. We're working on the one article that went out. We also have additional plans of doing social media, email, The Zoom calls kind of set up a town hall FAQ as we keep pushing out information. Our next goal or step is to get all of this information to the club, since this will be a physical delegates meeting on the constitutional. So that's like our next step in our process. And then we'll open those doors for figuring out who would be on this panel, I guess, to do these FAQs to make sure we are addressing all of our members' questions. So I just wanted to give an update on our communication. That's it.
Thank you, Lori. Okay, Chris?
Hi, well, kind of new here to the IBT. As those of you that don't know me, I'm Region 7, 2nd VP, and non-com is a non-commissioned officer. That threw me off for a little while. But my question is regarding international rallies. My understanding currently is that the third VP kind of selects where the international rally is going to be when the third VP becomes president. And I guess going forward, what will that process look like?
Lori?
Actually, I can answer. Chris, we've been in transition for almost 3 years now of taking those responsibilities and built into the HQ staff.
Okay.
So we can have more consistency. Everybody doesn't have to learn a new job every year, different aspects of it, but that is now been in our hands for a couple of years.
Okay, well, thank you. That helps. And actually,
Sure.
This meeting has helped quite a bit. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Okay, on Jenny, do you have anything else you want to add?
Really want to thank the people that had the courage to come forward with what might be considered an opposing viewpoint. I really do. And the reason why is because sometimes that's hard. You know, Linda making a comment about people throwing rocks. No one wants to do that. And every time you bring forward information that is unclear to you, or you feel strongly to the opposite side, it gives everybody an opportunity to assess and redirect and try to include what concerns you in this proposal. I am grateful for that. To everybody else that spoke and contributed and supported things, I'm thankful for that. I am really in favor of this. Yes, go ahead and tell me right now I'm campaigning, but I believe in it. I think it's a wise move for a large club to include a lot more people at the helm. That's all that I have to say. I will make sure you get an updated report.
Jenny, can I interrupt real quick? We missed Greg Vander, his hand was up. I'm sorry, guys.
And Joanne's hand is up too.
And Joanne's up now, and then I have a final poll available.
Thank you. When I look at this, I keep reflecting on my experience at the international rallies. I went to my first one in West Virginia, and yes, it was wet, and I was a parker, so I was wet. I've only missed one since then, and that was just because our rig broke down on the way to Salem, and we had to go back home. But one of the things that has struck my wife and I, and most of the friends that we've talked to through the years, has been that the international rally is dominated by the delegate meeting and other business stuff that the majority of the members are not involved in that are at the rally. And they're mostly confused about it, or they don't care. I know people I know say, well, hey, how come you can't go with us here? Well, I'm going to this meeting. I'm going to this meal, or whatever it is. And my wife is like, well, how come where are you? Oh, I'm at this thing. It's like the international rally is dominated by business that most people, they're either they don't care or they're unaware. They just want to have a good time. And I see this as a move for direct voting, involving everybody in who we choose to be leaders, rather than just the delegates, who, by the way, aren't always beholden to vote based on what their members said. There's different rules in the local club bylaws about how delegates are directed to vote or not vote. So I don't really think it's that much of a democracy, if you will, small d, that we currently have, and we have limited choices. And I think that moving this way is a good step to somewhat reduce the business at the international rally. I would like to see the delegate process eliminated. I think it's cumbersome. Most people today don't really understand what's going on there. If you look at this delegate meeting, no one goes to it unless you're a delegate. And it takes up a lot of resources. So overall, I feel like this is a good step forward for the club. Definitely an organizational change, more attractive to younger people and working people. I still work, my wife still works, and it's somewhat difficult, but we do make time for the club. And I just think this is a step forward that is very positive and should streamline things and should make the international rally a much more vibrant thing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Greg.
Joanne.
I just have a couple of things, and Greg brought up something else. Greg, the elimination of the delegates meeting is a separate issue from the restructuring, okay? Because there are 2 constitutional amendments before the delegates meeting. Now, up until the article appeared in the April Blue Beret, I think there are many members who were not even aware of the possibility of being restructured. In my opinion, that was one-sided. We need to offer a rebuttal from whoever is opposed to this idea, but based on fact, not on rumor. Because to be an educated voter, all of our members need to hear both sides of the issue, not just one. And right now, they've only heard one, which is now causing them to ask a lot of questions. I've also had people talk to me about voting. They're expecting or thought that they were going to be able to vote directly on the constitutional amendments. And they knew that they could vote on the international officers, and they assumed, and you know how assuming things get us all into trouble, that they were also going to be asked to vote individually on the constitutional amendments. What some of the comments are is, when I explained about the process with the delegates, it was, my unit president has never asked me how I wanted to vote on either an international officer in the past or a constitutional amendment. They have just prepared, or they have announced at the delegates meeting a vote, but it didn't include my vote. It didn't include anybody's vote in my unit. So we have got to make sure 2 things. And you as region president specifically, you have got to make sure that your unit presidents, local club presidents, ask their members how they vote on these 2 issues, the 2 constitutional amendments. They need to give their members an opportunity to vote, and then they need to announce those votes at the delegates meeting. The second thing is, we need to get across somehow that when a delegate and or his alternate is appointed by the local club, that they are told how to vote, but they are also instructed to vote their conscience. You know how this local club would vote if an amendment is presented, or if there is another candidate for that position. So keep that in mind when you are voting. So if those delegates are not instructed to vote their conscience, what has happened in the past is someone has come to the delegates meeting, there has been an amendment proposed, and they have not been able to vote on it because they have been instructed specifically how to vote on the information that was already out to the units or to the local clubs. So, this communication link, region presidents, get those 2 points, please, out to your local club presidents about the delegates meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. Karen.
I want to just clarify that the delegate for each local club should be given the ability to vote his conscience if there is a change to the motion in front of them. They can't go in and vote their conscience unless there's been a change or a significant change. They have to vote the way the individual club members want them to on the motion if there's no changes to it. They can't just say different. So the voting the conscience is only if there's a change to the motion as presented. Just so so people don't think, well, so what if I vote? My president can vote their conscience and change what I vote. And it's like, no, they only can vote their conscience based on feedback from everybody in their club if there's a change to the motion.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Lori.
2 things. We could, the whole delegate president voting, conscious voting, that's a whole nother day's Zoom call. Because I can tell you every single club does it differently. They don't do as they're supposed to do it. So that is actually the wild, wild west. So anyway, and then I just wanted to touch base on Greg's comment, as in we've already been discussing decoupling the business with the IR. So that is already on the books for 2023. We have no plans of having an IBT meeting. As you guys, if you've looked at the IBT page on our website, it already has all of our meetings listed out actually through 2023. So, and it says they're virtual or if we're going to have a strategy session or something of that nature. So those were just my 2 comments, Ty. And then I let Jenny continue. And then I do have one last poll to throw out there.
Okay, go ahead, Jenny.
Well, at this point, I want to thank every single person for investing time and thought, discernment, making decisions, looking at this with an open mind. I'm really grateful to you all. I'm particularly grateful to my team. They have just done such a great job, and you probably have no concept of how many hours and hours and hours we have met. In fact, Sunday night, we met for 1 hour and 40 minutes. So the time they have dedicated into this is Herculean. Thank you very much, Ty, for creating this committee for us. I'm grateful to you, and I'm grateful to Lori and to Eric for the support behind the scenes with getting questions and things that I didn't understand answered. Particularly, I want to thank Tom Smithson. Thank you so much, Tom. You educated me a lot. Lori, I'm going to turn it over to you for our final poll question. I hope you found this to be informative.
All right, here we go.
Well, everybody's doing that poll. I want to say thank you to Jenny and her team for doing all of this. I'm going to look at having a committee for the nominating update. So we'll be talking about that in the near future because that is a point to this. And but Jenny, I do appreciate everything. I know you've done this on vacation and everything while you've been traveling to take care of stuff. So thank you for you and your team.
Well, Mr. President, it's been a privilege to serve. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Lori, what do we got?
All right. Yep, we got 30 and 31. And it looks like we need to work on some more communications. I can just share this real quick. And it shows that, all right, can you all see that? So yeah, we have 30 of 31, 12 said they've changed their structure, 18 have not. So we'll continue to work on education.
Okay.
May I make a comment there, Lori? The question was a bit vague, I think, because you asked whether the perspective has changed. And so in some ways, I think this is a good proposal, but what came to light during this informative meeting was an additional information about my perspective. I look at it a little differently. I can see where some of the challenges are going to be to explain it, and things that need to be ironed out that have still to be worked. But I
Perry,
still
if I-
fundamentally, go ahead.
If I can interrupt you, Jenny just asked me to throw that question up as that was in process. So that's why there wasn't a lot of, it's just, we wanted to get a quick feel on where our communication needs to be worked on. So.
Okay. Perry, you all set then?
Thank you.
Okay, Karen?
I just kind of wanted to say the same thing. My perspective has not changed. It's still this is something we should go forward with, but the way the question was worded, I had to answer no. So you can't look at all those no's and think that's not good.
True.
Okay.
Okay, Brad, I know we put you off. Are you in a better reception area?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I appreciate everything, all the questions. I was just trying to make a point that as even though every other year we're going to be, the membership's going to vote on 9 open positions, not all those positions are going to be new people. Some people are going to ask to stay on and hope that the membership will be on. So the nomination committee doesn't necessarily have to come up with 9 new people or more. If they come up with 9 people, we might be voting on 13 people, is all I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Yep. Exactly.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us. This has been good. I know it's been a long day for everybody, but I appreciate taking the time to get us educated on this. Lori, do you have anything else to say?
Nope, that's it. I guess we'll be in touch with more documents and more communication.
Okay, sounds great. Everybody have a great night. Thank you.
All right, thanks.